Imagine a talk show where the host's sharpest weapon isn't her words, but her secrets. Tonight, Victoria Hayes, the queen of primetime carnage, sits across from Marcus Grant, a legend armed with truths that could shatter her icy empire. What starts as a verbal duel spirals into a reckoning. Paintings buried, graves unearthed, and a father's sins bleeding into the spotlight. Don't look away, this isn't just television. It's a mirror. Before we dive into the chaos, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Trust me, you'll want front row seats to the meltdown. The studio lights dimmed to a glacial blue, casting long shadows across the stage. A hush fell over the audience as Victoria Hayes stepped into the spotlight, her stilettos clicking like a metronome counting down to disaster. She adjusted her signature black sunglasses, twin voids swallowing the light, before settling into the crimson interview chair. The camera zoomed in, capturing the sharp line of her jaw, a blade honed by 5 years of eviscerating celebrities on national television. "Welcome to Behind the Mask," she began, her voice a velvet whip. "Where we don't just scratch the surface, we dig until the bones sing." The teleprompter scrolled her script, but Victoria never needed it. Her questions were scalpels, her pauses surgical. Tonight's guest emerged from the wings with a chuckle that warmed the air. Marcus Grant, 75-year-old acting legend, moved with the ease of a man who'd long ago made peace with ghosts. His tweed jacket smelled of old libraries and pipe smoke, his smile a sunrise in a room full of twilight. Victoria's lips tightened. She hated how he made aging look like a privilege. "Mr. Grant," she leaned forward, sunglasses reflecting his wrinkled kindness like a funhouse mirror. "You've played kings, warriors, saints." But off-screen, her pause was a predator circling. "You're just another old man chasing relevance. Does it terrify you? Knowing the world pities relics?" The audience stiffened. This was Victoria's signature. First question, first blood. Marcus studied her, not the woman but the armor. The black sunglasses, the crimson lips, the blazer structured like a suit of mail. When he finally spoke, his voice was a campfire in December. "Tell me, Victoria, do you sleep in those glasses? Or is the dark where you hide your tells?" Flicker. Microscopic, but there. The twitch of her ring finger against the armrest. For 5 years, no guest had dared mention the sunglasses. She recovered with a serpent's speed. "Let's discuss your tells. At your age, memory must be selective. How many co-stars have you outlived? 10? 20? 23, Marcus said softly. "I light a candle for each on their birthday." Alice loved gardenias. Michael preferred whiskey shots. His gaze drifted to Victoria's hands, where a pale band of skin betrayed where a ring once lived. "Grief is a language, my dear. You're fluent in silence." The control room erupted. Ratings spiked as Victoria's producer hissed in her earpiece. "Keep him talking about the dead. Morbidity sells." But Victoria was ice. "Spare me the platitudes. You've built a career on nostalgia. Isn't that just grief's prettier cousin?" Marcus leaned back, the leather chair creaking like an old tree. "You mistake nostalgia for gratitude. I mourn, yes, but I don't let it chain me to graves." His eyes narrowed, sudden and sharp. "Unlike some." A beat. 2. The studio's air conditioning hummed like a trapped wasp. Victoria opened her mouth and froze. The teleprompter blinked. Question 3, childhood trauma. Push harder. But Marcus was smiling now, sad and knowing, as if he'd glimpsed the script pages crumpling in her mind. He said nothing. Didn't need to. Victoria Hayes hesitated. The studio's digital clock flickered to 2:30 a.m. A witching hour for truth. Victoria smoothed her notes, the paper crinkling like dry bones. Marcus had tilted his chair back, studying the ceiling's spiderweb of lights as if they held constellations only he could decipher. "Let's address the elephant in the room," Victoria began, her voice sharper than the studio's halogen beams. "You're 75. How can you possibly relate to Gen Z? Their struggles? Their language?" She lingered on the word like it was a grenade pin. Marcus chuckled, the sound rich with tobacco and nostalgia. "Funny. I once asked my grandfather the same question when he called jazz the devil's nursery rhymes." He leaned forward, the leather chair sighing. "Youth isn't about age, Victoria. It's about whether you still believe." "Believe in what?" "Fairy tales." Her knuckles whitened around the pen. "Stick to the script. Her producer barked through the earpiece. Demand anecdotes about his retirement. But Marcus was unfolding a handkerchief, linen, yellowed at the edges, revealing a pocket watch. "This," he said, winding its rusted gears, "belonged to my drama teacher. He gave it to me when I dropped out of law school to join a guerrilla theater troupe. My father disowned me. My fiancé left. But Mr. Hargrove said—" He paused, the watches ticking filling the silence. "Time only betrays those who betray themselves." Victoria's laugh was a shard of ice. Cute metaphor. But the world isn't a stage. Some of us don't have the luxury of believing. No. Marcus's eyes locked onto hers, bypassing the sunglasses. "What did you believe in at 20? Before the suits and the ratings and the—" He gestured to her blazer. "Armor." The question hung like a guillotine. Cut to commercial. Her producer screamed. Victoria ignored him. "I believed in winning," she hissed. "Still do." "Ah." Marcus nodded, pulling a faded photograph from his wallet. A younger version of him stood beside a girl with paint-splattered jeans, their arms slung over a protest sign, "Art or starve." "My daughter, Clara. She's 50 now, runs a homeless shelter. When she was your age, she believed in feeding strangers more than her own ambition." He traced the photo's creases. Funny how the luxury of believing built her a kingdom. Victoria's throat tightened. Clara's grin was identical to the woman in her own childhood photos her father burned after the art phase. The audience leaned in, smelling blood. "Enough nostalgia," Victoria snapped. "You're evading the—" "You're right." Marcus pocketed the watch. "Let's discuss your youth. The year you quit painting. The month you stopped visiting your mother's grave. The day you became this." He gestured to her entire being, the blazer, the glasses, the armor. The studio plunged into silence. "You," Victoria's voice cracked. "Research is a wonderful thing." Marcus unfolded a crumpled playbill from 1999. Denver Youth Art Fair, 2nd place. Victoria Hayes, oil on canvas. "Your father funded my first film. He showed me this, bragging how he'd redirected your potential." His thumb brushed the smudged title. "Self-Portrait with Broken Wings." "Tell me, Victoria, do you still paint your nightmares? Or do you just live them?" The teleprompter died. Somewhere in the dark, a crew member gasped. Victoria's hand flew to her sunglasses, always the damn glasses, as if they could stop the memory flooding in. The smell of turpentine, her father's roar as he smashed her easel, the way her mother's funeral roses had dripped onto the half-finished portrait. Marcus gentled his voice. "Youth isn't an enemy or ally. It's a mirror. You're just afraid to see what's reflected." For the first time in years, Victoria's sunglasses fogged. The studio's air tasted metallic, charged with the aftermath of shattered secrets. Victoria gripped the edge of her desk, her reflection in the black sunglasses fractured like a cubist painting. On screen, an email from a viewer named Ethan glowed. A digital cry for help she'd weaponized. "Let's discuss real youth," she said, tapping Ethan's photo. A gaunt boy in a blood-stained apron, standing before a slaughterhouse. 20 years old. Wanted to be a composer. Now he minces pork for minimum wage. Her smile was a scalpel. "Your turn, Marcus. Tell him your inspirational lie about following dreams." Marcus studied Ethan's eyes, the same hollow look he'd seen in soldiers post-war. "What's your lie, Victoria? That you're content being your father's scalpel?" The audience inhaled in unison. She barreled on. "Ethan's problem isn't age. It's weakness. Dreams are for those who can afford to starve." "Funny." Marcus reached under his chair, producing a canvas wrapped in butcher paper. "I know someone who'd disagree." Victoria froze. The wrapping fell away, revealing a painting of herself. Not the ice queen of prime time, but a woman mid-scream, tears cutting through mascara. The signature in the corner screamed Lucas in vermilion. "Your favorite punching bag," Marcus said. "The bus driver you mocked for wasting his life on piano covers." Memories flashed. Lucas's calloused hands fumbling Chopin on a toy keyboard during a street interview. Victoria's voiceover dripping venom. "This is what happens when talent marries delusion." "Lucas painted this after your segment aired," Marcus continued. "Sold his car to buy oils. Slept on park benches. But here's the twist." He flipped the canvas, revealing a second painting. Lucas's self-portrait, his face split between bus driver uniform and concert tails. He thanks you. For what? Victoria's laugh cracked. Ruining his life? For showing him the cost of fear. Marcus leaned in. He's giving his first recital tomorrow. Front row seats reserved for you. The studio lights dimmed, a single spotlight isolating Victoria. Somewhere, a crew member sniffled. Spare me the melodrama. She shoved the painting away. He'll fail. They always do. Like you did. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. When your father smashed your easel. When you chose vengeance over watercolors. A flashback erupted, unwanted, vivid. 17-year-old Victoria mixing cobalt blue for her mother's portrait, the door slamming open, her father's shadow swallowing the canvas. You're wrong, she hissed. I didn't fail. I evolved. Into what? Marcus gestured to Ethan's frozen image. A prophet of despair? A priestess of pragmatism? He unfolded a flyer. Lucas's recital details scribbled in charcoal. Ethan emailed you because he's desperate to hear someone say it's okay to want more. And you. He crumpled the flyer. You're desperate to prove it's not. Victoria's hand shot out, seizing the crumpled paper. For a heartbeat, the studio held its breath. Then she laughed, harsh, brittle, and tossed it into the trash. Send Ethan my condolences. Delusion suits him. As the cameras cut to commercial, Marcus retrieved the flyer, smoothing its creases over the painting's tear-streaked face. The studio's neon clock bled crimson. 7:27 p.m. Victoria's perfume, cold jasmine and sharper things, clung to the air like a threat. Marcus rolled up his sleeves, slow and deliberate, revealing scars that mapped a childhood written in violence. The audience leaned forward, breath held. Let's talk about pain, Victoria began, her voice steadier than her pulse. You've romanticized suffering as some noble teacher. But isn't that just Stockholm Syndrome for the broken? Marcus traced the V-shaped scar on his wrist. My father gave me this at 12. Said it stood for victim. He chuckled, dark and honeyed. Took me decades to rebrand it as vengeance. How poetic. Victoria's smile didn't reach her ears. But this isn't about your daddy issues. It's about your mother. The words detonated. Victoria's sunglasses slipped. She righted them with a jerk. My mother died in a car accident. A tragedy, not a tabloid trope. Ah, the official story. Marcus pulled a yellowed envelope from his jacket. Inside lay a contract dated 1985. Robert Hayes's signature looping like barbed wire. Your father paid me $50,000 to stay silent. A bargain, really, considering he'd just beaten his wife to death. The studio reeled. Victoria shot up, chair screeching. Lies. You're a washed-up hack rewriting history for ratings. Am I? Marcus unfolded a letter, its edges moth-eaten. To the Denver Post. If you're reading this, I'm dead. Robert Hayes murdered his wife. The hospital covered it up. Ask Nurse Margaret Lowe. A whimper escaped Victoria's throat. Unfiltered, feral. Margaret retired to a nursing home, Marcus said, nodding to the wings. But she's here tonight. An elderly woman shuffled into the spotlight, her nurse's pin glinting. The audience erupted. Victoria's producer screamed into her earpiece. Abort! Abort! Ms. Lowe, Marcus prompted gently. The woman's voice trembled. I treated Eleanor Hayes. Her injuries, no car crash does that. Broken ribs. Fingernails ripped out. Robert threatened my license if I talked. She looked at Victoria, tears magnifying her cataracts. Your mother's last words were protect Victoria. Victoria's knees buckled. She gripped the desk, the world tilting. Her father's voice echoed. You want to paint? I'll give you something to paint. As he dragged her from her mother's corpse, Marcus placed the contract before her. You accused me of profiting from pain. But you. He pointed to Robert's signature. You've built an empire on his blood money. The cameras zoomed. Victoria's reflection splintered in her sunglasses. A dozen fractured girls screaming. Why now? She rasped. Because you're ready. Marcus tucked a dried gardenia into her hand, her mother's favorite. Eleanor loved your art. She hid your sketches under her pillow. Victoria's armor cracked. A sob escaped raw and jagged before she choked it into silence. The audience sat paralyzed. Marcus stood, his shadow engulfing her. Pain isn't a diamond. It's a lens. Now you see clearly, don't you? The gardenia crumbled in her fist, petals falling like orphan truths. The studio's emergency lights bathed everything in sickly amber. Victoria clutched her mother's ring, a silver serpent swallowing its tail, as Marcus dialed a number on speakerphone. The audience sat frozen, their phones recording the carnage. Last question, Victoria said, her voice scraped raw. You claim love conquers fear. Then why do you fear him? She nodded to the shadows where Robert Hayes lurked, his tailored suit straining over fists that had rewritten history. Marcus didn't flinch. I fear for him. Hell's crowded with men who mistake power for purpose. Robert stormed into the light, face mottled with rage. Enough. This farce ends now. He grabbed Victoria's arm, the serpent ring biting into her flesh. You're coming home. Home. She wrenched free, laughter sharp as shattered glass. You mean your mausoleum of lies? The audience gasped. Robert raised his hand, a reflex carved into Victoria's bones, but froze as Marcus pressed play on his phone. Robert's voice, tinny and venomous. Give me the nurse's name or I'll have Victoria committed. A pill-addicted mess, the public loves a train wreck. Victoria staggered. The ring slipped, rolling toward Marcus. You! Robert lunged for the phone, but Marcus intercepted him. Decades of stage combat lending grace to the grapple. You taught her to fear love, Marcus said, pinning Robert's wrist. But you forgot, fear is flammable. Victoria knelt, retrieving the ring. Her mother's last words echoed, protect Victoria. And suddenly she knew. Eleanor hadn't meant protection from Robert. She'd meant protection from becoming him. Dad. Victoria stepped into the spotlight, the ring gleaming like a blade. You once told me tears are for the weak. Let's test that theory. She tapped her earpiece. Roll the tape. The screen lit with CCTV footage. Robert bribing a doctor, slapping a nurse, shredding Victoria's childhood paintings. The audience erupted. You, Robert choked. You've ruined us. No, she slid the ring onto her thumb. You ruined you. I'm just the cleanup crew. Marcus approached, offering the gardenia petals from Chapter 4. Love isn't a weakness, Victoria. It's the only weapon that outlives fear. Robert spat at their feet. Sentimental garbage. You'll both die forgotten. Maybe. Marcus smiled, crushing the petals into the contract from Chapter 4. But we'll die free. Victoria turned to the camera, tears glinting like defiance. To every Ethan, every Lucas, every broken dreamer watching, your pain isn't a chain. It's a compass. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes the world had never seen. And to the Roberts of the world? She dropped the glasses, lenses shattering. Your reign ends here. The studio exploded in cheers. Robert crumpled, a deflated tyrant. Marcus placed a hand on Victoria's shoulder. Not a mentor, but an equal. The Hayes mansion loomed like a mausoleum, its marble floors echoing with the ghosts of silenced laughter. Victoria stood at the threshold of a room she hadn't entered in decades, her mother's studio. Dust motes danced in the slanted moonlight, illuminating canvases shrouded in white sheets. She pulled the cloth from the largest frame. Eleanor Hayes stared back, not as the broken woman in Marcus's stories, but as a force of nature. The painting was unfinished, brushstrokes wild, lips smudged with red lipstick that spelled Victoria. You are my color. A sob caught in Victoria's throat. Her mother had painted this the night before her death. A knock shattered the silence. Lucas stood in the doorway, his bus driver uniform replaced by a paint-splattered hoodie. In his hands lay a wooden box. Marcus thought you might need this, he said, offering it like a peace treaty. Inside rested a horsehair brush, its handle carved with blooming gardenias. I made it after everything, Lucas murmured. The bristles are from a mare I used to feed apples. She died last winter. Victoria traced the carvings. Why? Because art outlives us. He nodded to Eleanor's portrait. Your mother knew that. She's dead. I'm not. The words tasted bitter. Lucas stepped closer, his eyes on the unfinished canvas. You're breathing. That means you still get to choose. Keep building walls or He dipped a finger into dried lipstick on the palette, smearing a crimson streak across Victoria's sunglasses. Paint something real. She flinched. The studio's silence thickened. You think it's that easy? Her voice cracked. That I can just start over? No. Lucas lifted a sheet, revealing a canvas of Victoria herself, painted by Eleanor. The girl in the portrait clutched a brush, her eyes blazing with pre-betrayal hope. Starting over is a myth. But you can add. He placed the new brush in her hand, layer by layer. Victoria's fingers trembled. The brush clattered to the floor. I can't, she whispered. You're afraid it'll be worse than before. I'm afraid it'll be better. The confession tore free. What if I'm good? What if I feel again? Her knees buckled. Lucas caught her, the scent of turpentine and bus exhaust oddly comforting. Eleanor's portrait watched, lips parted in an eternal secret. The gallery walls breathed with rebellion. Victoria's unfinished self-portrait with broken wings, hung center stage, now layered with bold strokes of vermilion and gold. In the corner, Lucas tuned an old piano, its keys yellowed like forgotten teeth. Ethan stood beside him, clutching a composition notebook, his slaughterhouse apron replaced by a suit that smelled of hope. Victoria adjusted the black sunglasses one last time. The lenses, once opaque, now bore her lipstick-scrawled apology. Sorry I hid. The cameras rolled. Welcome to Behind the Mask, unfiltered, she said, her voice softer, truer. Tonight we're not digging for bones. We're planting gardens. She removed the sunglasses. The audience gasped, not at her naked eyes but at the mural behind her. A collage of every guest she'd eviscerated, now reimagined as heroes. Marcus's scarred wrist cradled a gardenia. Lucas's bust transformed into a concert hall. Ethan's butcher knife became a conductor's baton. My father taught me to fear vulnerability, she continued, crushing the sunglasses under her heel. But today I'm learning to fear something else, silencing the music. Lucas played the first chord. Ethan's symphony swelled. A tempest of strings and woodwinds that shook the champagne flutes. On screen, Marcus's letter flickered. Strength isn't armor. It's the courage to bleed in color. As the crescendo peaked, Victoria dipped Lucas's horsehair brush into Eleanor's dried lipstick. She painted one final stroke across her mural, a girl with shattered wings now soaring. In the shadows, Robert Hayes knelt before Eleanor's portrait, a gardenia trembling in his hands. The camera didn't see him. Didn't need to. As Victoria's shattered sunglasses litter the stage, one question lingers. Can a woman who built her throne on ruins ever paint a new legacy? Or will the ghosts of her father's lies drag her back into the dark? Stay tuned for the final act, where the brush meets the bloodstains, and every stroke could be her last confession. This isn't the end. It's the first crack in the armor.